Sophia Brooks was about to make a mistake she would replay in her head for years. She just didn't know it yet. All she knew was this: she was late, and today was not the kind of day that forgave mistakes. It was 8:42 a.m. on a sweltering Tuesday morning in downtown Atlanta, the kind of heat that stuck to your skin and made every bad decision feel heavier. Sophia moved down Peachtree Street with quick, determined strides, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown she was losing. Cars honked. Pedestrians rushed past. The city didn't slow down for anyone, especially not a struggling real estate agent one missed deal away from losing everything. Today was her last chance to close a listing that could keep her license active for another year. One sale, one signature, one commission that could pull her out of the hole she'd been sinking into for months. No deal meant no money. No money meant overdue rent. Overdue rent meant another humiliating phone call from her landlord, and worse, another from her mother asking if she'd considered something more stable. Sophia tightened her grip on her tote bag and kept moving. She passed a glass-fronted building and caught her reflection by accident. She stopped, dead. "Oh no," she whispered. Her curls had fallen flat on one side, clinging to her forehead like they'd given up halfway through the morning. Her eyeliner had smudged beneath her eyes, turning confidence into exhaustion. And her red blazer, the one thing that usually made her feel powerful, was wrinkled in a way that screamed, "You slept somewhere you shouldn't have." Which was true. Sophia had slept in her car the night before, parked behind an empty strip mall, because gas money mattered more than dignity when rent was due. She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. "I don't need perfect," she muttered to herself. "I just need decent." She looked around, scanning the street, hoping for a restroom, a shop window, anything. That's when she saw it. A jet-black luxury sedan parked neatly along the curb, polished so perfectly it reflected the morning light like a mirror from a magazine spread. The side mirror gleamed, clean, flawless, almost unreal. The windows were darkly tinted, hiding whatever, or whoever, was inside. Sophia hesitated. She glanced up and down the sidewalk. People were rushing past, eyes glued to phones, coffee cups in hand, minds elsewhere. No one was paying attention to her. The car looked empty. "It's 10 seconds, she whispered. "That's all." She stepped closer. The mirror gave her a crisp reflection, unforgiving but clear. She pulled out her lipstick and reapplied it carefully, smoothing the color with practiced precision. She adjusted her curls, tucked one side neatly behind her ear, and straightened her blazer. Confidence mattered in real estate. Presentation mattered. She tugged discreetly at her bra strap, lifting everything back into place. Professional, composed, ready. A small human moment. One she didn't think anyone would ever notice. She leaned in slightly, checking her profile. And then, the window rolled down. The sound was soft, smooth, expensive. Sophia froze mid-motion. Her heart slammed so hard it felt like it skipped a beat entirely. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. Inside the car sat a man who looked completely at ease, one arm resting against black leather, posture relaxed like the world bent itself around his schedule. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His skin glowed against the dark interior, his jaw sharp, his smile amused. He had been watching her. The realization sent heat rushing to her face. "You done?" he asked calmly. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They carried authority, confidence, the kind that came from never being questioned. Sophia snatched her tote bag off the hood like it was on fire. I'm sorry," she blurted out. "I thought the car was empty. I was just fixing my makeup." His eyes flicked over her slowly, deliberately. "Interesting strategy," he said. She frowned. Strategy for what?" "For attracting attention," he replied flatly. "If you're soliciting, be direct. I don't have time for theatrics." The words hit her like ice water. "What?" she snapped. "Excuse me?" He tilted his head slightly, unimpressed. Then why were you adjusting yourself using my car like it was a dressing room? Her face burned, humiliation mixing with fury so fast she didn't have time to stop it. Because I'm late for work, she fired back. Real work, selling homes. Not everyone standing near your precious vehicle is trying to sleep with you. His lips curved faintly. You chose the wrong car. Oh, trust me, Sophia said, anger sharpening her voice. Even if I were interested, which I am not, I wouldn't touch someone this arrogant with a 10-foot pole. She reached into her tote bag, pulled out a business card, and flicked it through the open window. Sophia Brooks, she said, pointing at him. Real estate agent. If you ever need property advice, call me. If you need an ego check, look in the mirror. Then she turned and walked away, heart pounding, hands shaking, pride bruised but intact. Behind her, the man picked up the card slowly. He read it once, then again. A slow smile spread across his face, genuine, amused, intrigued. For the first time in weeks, Wilson Jack laughed. Sophia didn't see that smile. She didn't see the way his eyes followed her retreating figure, and she definitely didn't know that the arrogant billionaire she'd just embarrassed was about to step directly into her future. If this moment already has you hooked, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Because what Sophia doesn't know yet is that this single mistake is about to change everything. She disappeared into the crowd, convinced she'd just survived one more humiliating moment in a long list of them. She had no idea it was the beginning. Wilson Jack didn't move for several seconds after she disappeared into the crowd. The city resumed its rhythm around him, cars inching forward, horns flaring, footsteps passing. But inside the back seat of the sedan, time felt suspended. He sat exactly where he was, one arm draped along the leather seat, the other holding a thin rectangle of cardstock between his fingers. Sophia Brooks. He turned the business card over once, then again. Real estate agent. The corner of his mouth twitched. That, Wilson said slowly, breaking the silence, was unexpected. From the driver's seat, Marcus glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Marcus had been Wilson's driver and head of security for nearly 5 years, long enough to read his moods, long enough to know when something had gone off script. I heard shouting, Marcus said carefully. Everything all right, sir? Wilson let out a low laugh. Not loud, not amused in the usual way. It surprised even him. I just got accused of thinking too highly of myself, he said, and then got insulted for it. Marcus blinked. That's new? Wilson leaned back, eyes drifting toward the sidewalk where Sophia had vanished moments earlier. Most women reacted the same way when they realized who he was, or thought they knew who he was. Recognition, awe, calculation, some version of charm layered over ambition. Sophia Brooks had done none of that, and she hadn't tried to impress him. She hadn't apologized excessively. She hadn't softened when he'd challenged her. She'd pushed back, and she'd walked away. Did you know her? Marcus asked. No, Wilson said. That's the point. He looked down at the card again, tracing the simple lettering with his thumb. No flashy logo, no exaggerated title. Just a name and a profession, printed clean and confident. Sophia Brooks, real estate agent. Marcus shifted the car into drive, easing away from the curb. You okay, sir? Because from where I'm sitting, it looked like you enjoyed that. Wilson exhaled through his nose. I don't enjoy being yelled at. But, Wilson admitted, I do enjoy being surprised. He replayed the moment in his head, not the confrontation itself, but the look on her face when he'd accused her. Shock first, then disbelief, then fury sharpened by pride. She hadn't frozen. She hadn't shrunk. She'd stood her ground. That wasn't common. Most people adjusted themselves around him the moment they sensed power. Money had a way of bending conversations before they even started. Wilson had learned that early, first as a tech founder, then as an investor. And finally, as the man whose name alone could raise or tank property values. Control followed him everywhere. And yet, standing on that sidewalk, Sophia Brooks hadn't cared who he was. She'd cared who she was. That woman didn't recognize you, Marcus said, stating the obvious. Wilson's smile returned, faint but genuine. No, she didn't. And she called you arrogant. She called me worse, Wilson corrected. She implied I wasn't worth touching with a 10-foot pole. Marcus chuckled under his breath. You don't hear that often. Never, Wilson said, which makes it memorable. The car merged into traffic, Atlanta's skyline unfolding ahead of them. Wilson usually used the drive to review reports or answer emails. Today, his tablet sat untouched beside him. Instead, his thoughts circled back to a woman in a red blazer, with smudged eyeliner and fire in her voice. He hadn't meant to offend her. At least, not consciously. But years of experience had trained him to assume certain things. When you had money, real money, patterns emerged. People hovered. People angled. People performed. Sophia Brooks hadn't performed. She'd been in a hurry. She'd needed a mirror. She'd made a choice without considering him at all. That, more than the insults, lingered. She wasn't trying to get your attention, Marcus said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. No, Wilson agreed. She wasn't. He frowned slightly, considering that. The truth was, Wilson had grown used to being the center of every interaction. Meetings revolved around his approval. Deals bent toward his interests. Even silence felt deferential in his presence. Sophia's indifference to that gravity unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite define. Run her name, Wilson said suddenly. Marcus's eyebrows lifted a fraction. You want a background check? Basic, Wilson replied. I'm not stalking her. Of course not, Marcus said mildly, already tapping commands into the system mounted discreetly near the dashboard. Wilson leaned back again, staring out the window as the city passed by. He told himself it was curiosity, professional curiosity. After all, he owned 6 properties across Atlanta. And real estate agents crossed his path daily. This one had simply stood out. That was all. Marcus cleared his throat. You want to know something interesting? Wilson glanced up. Always. She didn't hesitate, Marcus said. Most people hesitate when they challenge someone in a position of power, even when they're angry. Wilson nodded slowly. She didn't hesitate. She also didn't look scared, Marcus added. Embarrassed, sure. Angry, definitely. But not scared. Wilson's fingers tightened slightly around the business card. Fear was common. Respect was expected. Courage. That was rare. Sir, Marcus said a moment later, eyes flicking back to the screen. Sophia Brooks is licensed with the Georgia Real Estate Commission. Independent agent. She's not exactly thriving. Wilson raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning she's been active for a few years but hasn't closed many high-value deals, Marcus explained. She's currently at risk of losing her license if she doesn't close something soon. Wilson absorbed that quietly. So she wasn't careless. She was desperate. And still she'd chosen pride over opportunity. That makes sense, Wilson murmured. Marcus glanced back again. There's more. Wilson waited. She's listed as the assigned agent for a property under one of your holding companies, Marcus said. A Buckhead residence. Wilson stilled. The Buckhead mansion? He asked. Yes, sir, Marcus confirmed. The one you wanted handled quietly. The one you instructed us to assign to an external agent. Wilson's pulse ticked faster. Not from shock, but from something closer to anticipation. Sophia Brooks. Real estate agent. A last chance listing? He let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. So, he said slowly, the woman who just told me to look in the mirror is about to walk into my house. Marcus smiled. Looks that way. Wilson folded the business card neatly and slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Interesting didn't begin to cover it. Most encounters in his life were predictable. Negotiations followed patterns. People revealed their intentions within minutes. Control came easily when you understood the rules everyone else was playing by. Sophia Brooks wasn't playing by those rules. And now, whether she knew it or not, their paths were about to cross again, on his terms and hers. Wilson gazed out at the city, a slow, thoughtful smile forming. "Don't change anything," he said. "Let her come." Marcus nodded, pulling the car smoothly into the next turn. As the sedan disappeared into traffic, Wilson Jack found himself doing something he rarely did. He was looking forward to the next move. And somewhere across the city, Sophia Brooks was heading straight toward a house that would force both of them to see each other clearly, without mirrors, without assumptions, and without escape. Sophia Brooks sat in her car for a full 30 seconds before opening the door. The engine idled softly, vibrating through the steering wheel as she stared at the wrought iron gates in front of her. Beyond them rose a mansion so pristine it barely looked real. 3 stories of pale stone and glass, framed by manicured hedges, and a circular driveway that curved like a private promise. She checked the address again on her phone. Buckhead. This was it. Her stomach twisted. This listing wasn't just another commission. It was her last viable shot at keeping her real estate license active. The kind of property that could reset everything. Her finances, her reputation, her future. She'd reviewed the file a dozen times already. High-value seller. Discretion required. No name attached beyond a holding company. She hadn't expected this. Sophia smoothed her blazer, took a steadying breath, and stepped out of the car. The gates opened silently as she approached, and a uniformed security guard nodded, gesturing her through. The gravel crunched beneath her heels as she walked toward the entrance, every step echoing her nerves. Professional, focused, unshakable. She rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately. "Ms. Brooks?" the man asked. He was tall, older, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that screamed efficiency. His posture was polite but guarded, eyes sharp with quiet authority. "Yes," Sophia said, lifting her chin. "That's me." "I'm Marcus," he said. "Mr. Jack's personal assistant. Please, come in." Her heart skipped. Jack. The name settled in her chest like a warning bell. Sophia followed Marcus into a foyer that stole the breath right out of her lungs. Marble floors gleamed beneath soaring ceilings. Modern art lined the walls. Tasteful, expensive, deliberate. Sunlight streamed in through massive windows, illuminating a space that felt more like a museum than a home. "This way," Marcus said, leading her deeper inside. Sophia's heels clicked softly as she walked, her pulse pounding louder with every step. She cataloged the space automatically. Layout, flow, light angles, habit, arc survival. They stopped in a living room so expansive it made her feel small. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooked a manicured garden. Neutral tones dominated the room, interrupted by sharp lines and carefully chosen accents. Everything here was controlled, curated. Marcus gestured toward a seating area. "Mr. Jack will be with you shortly. Can I offer you water or coffee?" "Water would be great," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her stomach. Marcus nodded and disappeared down the hall. Sophia exhaled slowly, gripping the strap of her tote bag. Get it together. She'd handled difficult clients before, demanding sellers, arrogant investors. She knew how to navigate power without losing herself. This was no different. At least that's what she told herself. Footsteps sounded behind her. Sophia turned and felt the floor tilt beneath her. No sunglasses this time. No tinted glass. No distance. Wilson Jack stood a few feet away, dressed casually in dark slacks and a fitted shirt that did nothing to hide the quiet confidence in his stance. His expression was calm, unreadable, but his eyes sparked with recognition. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. "You," Sophia said, the word slipping out before she could stop it. Wilson's mouth curved faintly. "You used my car as a mirror." Heat flooded her face. "Of course," she said, recovering quickly. "Of course it's you." He studied her openly now, no trace of the amused observer from that morning. This version of Wilson Jack was controlled, deliberate, every inch the man who owned this space. "I didn't realize you were my client," Sophia said, her voice cool. If you had known who I was," Wilson interrupted gently, "would you have behaved differently?" She held his gaze. "No." Something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise? Then interest. "Good," he said. Marcus returned with a glass of water, setting it down discreetly before stepping back. "I'll give you two some privacy," he said, and left the room. The silence stretched. Wilson gestured toward the seating area. "Please." Sophia remained standing. "I prefer to start with the property," she said. "If you're ready." Wilson's lips twitched. "Straight to business." "This isn't personal," Sophia replied. "It's professional." He nodded slowly. "Of course." They moved through the house together, the air between them taut with unspoken tension. Sophia took the lead, slipping naturally into her role as she pointed out features. Yaz discussed potential market positioning, highlighted the strengths of the space. Her voice grew more confident with every room. "This layout appeals to buyers who value privacy without isolation," she said, gesturing toward a sunlit corridor. "The open floor plan creates flow, but the separation keeps it from feeling exposed." Wilson listened without interrupting, hands clasped loosely behind his back. "You know your work," he said after a moment. She glanced at him. "I do." They reached the back terrace, where the city skyline peeked through the trees. Sophia paused, letting the moment breathe. "This house is extraordinary," she said honestly, "but it needs the right story. The wrong agent could undersell it." Wilson turned to face her fully now. "And you're the right one?" he asked. Sophia met his gaze. "Yes." The confidence wasn't arrogance. It was earned. Hard won. Wilson studied her for a long moment. "You know," he said casually, "your license is up for renewal soon." Her spine stiffened. "That's not relevant to this listing," she said. "It is," he countered calmly. "If you don't close a deal of this magnitude soon, you'll lose the ability to represent properties like this at all." There it was, the reminder of just how much power he held. Sophia felt it press against her chest, but she refused to let it show. "If this is about revenge," she said evenly, "I'll walk." Wilson's brow lifted. "Revenge? You could easily replace me," she continued. "There are dozens of agents who would beg for this opportunity. If you're looking to humble me for earlier, save us both the time." Silence settled between them again. Wilson exhaled slowly. "No," he said. "This isn't about that." "Then what is it about?" Sophia asked. He stepped closer, not invading her space, but commanding attention. "It's about competence," he said, "and integrity. You didn't flatter me. You didn't recognize me. You didn't care who I was." She didn't respond. "I respect that," he continued, "but respect doesn't mean trust." Sophia folded her arms. Trust goes both ways. A corner of his mouth lifted. "You're not afraid of me," he observed. "I'm not afraid of losing my dignity," she replied. "There's a difference." Wilson held her gaze, something shifting in his expression. Admiration edged with challenge. Finally, he nodded. "All right," he said. He turned toward the window, hands in his pockets, the city stretching beyond the glass. "Sell this house," Wilson said calmly. "If you can." Sophia's breath caught. The words hung in the air, An offer, a test, a dare. She straightened her shoulders. "I will," she said. And for the first time, Wilson Jack smiled, not with arrogance, but with anticipation. Sophia didn't let herself breathe out fully until she was alone again in the grand living room. "Sell this house. If you can." The words echoed in her head, not as a threat, but as a challenge. She had heard worse, from clients who underestimated her, from brokers who dismissed her, from mentors who had quietly expected her to fail. Still, hearing it from him, from Wilson Jack, the man who could end her career with a signature, set her nerves on edge. She set her tote bag down carefully and pulled out her tablet, grounding herself in familiarity. Facts, numbers, strategy. Those were things she could control. Footsteps sounded behind her. "Well, let's continue," Wilson said. She turned, composed. "Of course." They moved through the house again, this time with intention rather than introduction. Sophia led, and Wilson followed, close enough to feel, distant enough to observe. "This wing would appeal to buyers with families," she said, gesturing down a wide hallway. "But it could also be repositioned as a private guest suite. Flexibility increases perceived value." "And what about the renovations?" Wilson asked. "You'd recommend updates before listing." Sophia didn't miss the edge in his tone. "Selective ones," she replied. "The structure is solid. Over-renovation would actually hurt the price point." He stopped walking. "Hurt it how?" he asked. Sophia turned to face him. "Buyers at this level aren't looking for someone else's taste. They want a canvas. The wrong upgrades make the house feel smaller." Wilson studied her, eyes sharp. "Interesting," he said. "Most agents push renovations to inflate commissions." "I'm not most agents," she said. They resumed walking. Wilson asked questions constantly. About market timing, buyer psychology, comparable properties. He probed, challenged, circled back, looking for cracks in her confidence. Sophia met every question head-on. "This house shouldn't be listed publicly at first," she said as they entered the dining room. "Private showings, invitation only. You don't sell exclusivity by advertising it." Wilson nodded once. "And if it sits?" "It won't," she said simply. That made him smile, briefly. They reached the kitchen, all marble and steel, sunlight spilling across polished surfaces. "Tell me something," Wilson said casually. "Why you?" Sophia didn't hesitate. "Because I'll treat this like my life depends on it." He raised an eyebrow. "That's not exactly reassuring." "It's honest," she countered. "You want someone hungry, someone who won't coast because they already won." Wilson leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You assume I value hunger over experience." "I assume you value results," she said, "and hunger delivers them." Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Measured. Wilson's gaze lingered on her. Not her appearance, but the way she held herself. The way she spoke without padding her words. The way she didn't soften her answers to make him comfortable. "You're very direct," he said. "I don't have time not to be," Sophia replied. They moved upstairs next, the tension between them sharpening rather than easing. Every room felt like a test, or every comment carried weight. "This bedroom," Wilson said, stepping inside the master suite, "has been described as intimidating." Sophia glanced around. High ceilings, expansive windows, minimal decor. "It's not intimidating," she said. "It's impersonal." He turned to her. "You think that's a problem?" "For some buyers," she said. "Not everyone wants to sleep in a space that feels like a showroom." "And your solution?" "Staging that suggests warmth without clutter," she said. "Lighting, texture, something that reminds people this is a home, not a fortress." Wilson's jaw tightened slightly. "A fortress," he repeated. Sophia met his eyes. "That's how it reads." He didn't argue. They stepped out onto the balcony, the city stretching below them. The same balcony Sophia would later stand on again, though neither of them knew that yet. You don't like excess, Wilson said. I don't like waste, Sophia corrected. There's a difference. He turned to her fully now. You called me arrogant, he said quietly. Sophia didn't flinch. You were. And now? He asked. She considered him for a moment. Now you're complicated. That earned a short laugh. You don't sugarcoat, Wilson said. I don't see the point, she replied. You don't strike me as someone who needs to be coddled. He studied her again, longer this time. You're wrong about one thing, he said. Oh? She replied. I'm not trying to intimidate you, Wilson said. I'm trying to understand you. Sophia folded her arms. Then stop testing me like I'm on trial. Power requires testing, he said. No, she said calmly. Insecurity does. The words landed clean and sharp. For a moment, so Wilson looked genuinely taken aback. Then, slowly, he nodded. Fair, he said. They stood there, the city humming below them, something shifting between challenge and recognition. I underestimated you, Wilson admitted. Sophia's lips curved faintly. You're not the first. He looked at her then, not as a billionaire evaluating an employee, but as a man recalibrating his assumptions. You don't bend easily, he said. I bend, she replied. I just don't break. Wilson exhaled, a sound halfway between frustration and respect. All right, he said at last. Let's talk terms. Sophia's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. I don't share listings, Wilson continued. This property stays controlled. Quiet. That works in my favor, she said. I want updates daily. You'll get them. I want veto power on buyers. She shook her head. That's not how trust works. He studied her, then nodded again. Fine. A pause. Exclusive, Wilson said. Sophia's breath caught despite herself. You're offering me exclusive rights? She asked carefully. Yes, he said. No co-listing, no secondary agents. That was everything. Security, authority. A real chance. She met his gaze. I won't disappoint you. I don't expect you to, Wilson said. I expect you to deliver. Sophia nodded once. As they walked back inside, Wilson glanced at her, a faint smile returning. Not smug, not amused. Intrigued. You're dangerous, he said lightly. She smiled back. So are you. And for the first time, neither of them sounded like it was a warning. Sophia didn't celebrate when she got home. There was no champagne, no triumphant phone call, no moment where she stood in the middle of her small apartment and let herself feel victorious. She closed the door behind her, leaned her forehead against the wood, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Exclusive rights. The words still felt unreal. She kicked off her heels, set her tote down by the couch, and stared at the stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. Final notices, late fees, letters she already knew the contents of without opening. Reality had a way of catching up fast. Her apartment was quiet in that way that felt heavier than noise. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, old building, peeling paint near the windows she kept meaning to fix. The air conditioner rattled when it worked, which wasn't often. She poured herself a glass of water instead of wine, and she needed clarity more than comfort. Her phone buzzed. Mom. Sophia stared at the screen for a second before answering. Hey, she said. Hi, sweetheart, her mother replied, voice warm but careful. I didn't wake you, did I? No, I just got in. A pause. Sophia could hear the television murmuring in the background. Some afternoon talk show, the familiar sounds of the house she'd grown up in, safe, steady, nothing like the instability she'd chosen. I talked to your aunt today, her mother said gently. She mentioned a position opening at the firm downtown, administrative, benefits included. Sophia closed her eyes. Mom? I'm not saying you have to take it, her mother rushed on. I just worry. You've been doing this real estate thing for a long time now. I know, Sophia said quietly. And it's not that I don't believe in you, her mother added. I just don't want to see you struggle forever. Sophia swallowed. I'm close. You always say that. This time is different. Another pause. I got a big listing today, Sophia said. A real one. Her mother's voice softened. Is that so? Yes. It could change everything. I hope so, baby, her mother said, and Sophia heard the hope layered carefully over doubt. I really do. They said their goodbyes a minute later. Sophia ended the call and set her phone down, her chest tight. She'd been close before. Too many times. She sank onto the couch and let her mind drift, back to the failures she never talked about. The condo deal that fell apart 2 days before closing when the buyer's financing collapsed. The open house where no one showed up except a curious neighbor and a couple who wanted to look around for design ideas. The broker who'd smiled kindly and said, You're good, Sophia, but maybe you're not aggressive enough for this market. Aggressive enough. She laughed softly at the memory, humorless. She wasn't aggressive. She was exhausted. This commission, this one, wasn't about status or proving a point. It was survival, rent, utilities, credit cards that hovered just below maxed out, student loans she'd deferred one too many times. If she pulled this off, she could breathe again. If she didn't, Sophia stood abruptly, shaking off the thought. She opened her laptop and spread her notes across the coffee table. Comparable sales, buyer profiles, private networks she could tap into. She worked late into the night, fueled by determination and the quiet fear that never quite left her. Across the city, Wilson Jack sat in the back of his car again, this time watching from across the street. Sophia Brooks exited a small building he'd already identified. Nothing fancy, no doorman, no valet. She walked with the same focused stride he'd seen earlier, keys in hand, posture straight, even when tired. She lives modestly, his assistant Marcus said from the front seat, glancing at his tablet. No luxury spending, no major assets, credit scores, strained. Wilson's jaw tightened slightly. Failures? He asked. Several deals that didn't close, Marcus replied. None due to misconduct. Market shifts, bad timing. Wilson watched as Sophia paused on the sidewalk to answer a call, her shoulders slumping just a fraction as she listened. Oh, she's carrying everything, Wilson murmured. Marcus glanced back at him. Sir? Nothing, Wilson said. He hadn't planned to do this, to watch, to care. Curiosity had justified it at first. Due diligence, control. But now, seeing her world stripped of polished confidence and professional armor, something unsettled him. She wasn't playing a game. She was fighting. Run the full background, Wilson said. Not just financials, history, education, references. Marcus hesitated. You already gave her exclusivity. I know, Wilson said. This isn't about trust. Then what is it about? Wilson didn't answer right away. Across the street, Sophia laughed suddenly, brief, tired, as she dug through her bag for her keys. Understanding, Wilson said finally. The days that followed blurred together. Sophia worked like someone who knew there was no safety net beneath her. She made calls before sunrise, sent emails late into the night, walked properties, refined pitches, carefully curated a short list of buyers who valued discretion over spectacle. She didn't ask Wilson for anything, not extra resources, not reassurance. That didn't go unnoticed. He read her daily updates with growing interest, clear, concise, strategic, no fluff. She didn't try to impress him. She simply performed. Wilson found himself looking forward to the emails more than he cared to admit. One evening, he stood by the window of his office, city lights reflecting off the glass, Sophia's latest update open on his tablet. You're smiling, Marcus observed. Wilson looked up. Am I? Yes, Marcus said. That usually means someone has your attention. Wilson didn't deny it. She's not afraid of me, he said. That's rare. And she should be, Wilson added quietly, which makes it more impressive that she isn't. He closed the tablet. Arrange a dinner, Wilson said. Private. Neutral ground. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Business? Of course, Wilson replied smoothly. But when Marcus turned away, Wilson allowed himself a rare, honest thought. I want to see who she is when she's not selling. Sophia was reviewing buyer profiles when the message came through. From Wilson Jack, subject, dinner. Her heart skipped. She opened it. Ms. Brooks, you've been thorough and efficient. I'd like to discuss strategy in more detail. Dinner. My treat. Tomorrow evening. She stared at the screen. Dinner wasn't standard. Not for strategy. Not like this. Her phone buzzed again. No pressure. Decline if you prefer to keep this strictly transactional. Sophia leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Transaction or not, everything about Wilson Jack complicated her life. He had since the moment that window rolled down. She thought about her bank account, her mother's worried voice, the weight she carried alone. Then she thought about his eyes, not cold, not arrogant, but sharp and curious. She typed her reply carefully. Tomorrow works. Location? The response came almost immediately. I'll handle it. Sophia set her phone down, pulse racing. Whatever this was about to become, it was already more than a listing. The restaurant was quiet in the way money demanded. No loud music, no flashing signs, just soft lighting, muted conversations, and a view of the Atlanta skyline framed perfectly by floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of place where menus didn't list prices and no one asked how you were paying. Sophia paused just inside the entrance, smoothing her dress once. Not because she was nervous, she told herself, but because presentation mattered. It always mattered. The hostess smiled politely. Ms. Brooks, Mr. Jack is expecting you. Of course he was. Sophia followed her past white linen tables, in understated elegance until she spotted him. Wilson Jack stood as she approached. Not rushed, not performative, just deliberate. He wore a dark blazer, no tie, sleeves slightly rolled. Casual for him, she guessed, but still unmistakably controlled. His eyes met hers with something unreadable flickering beneath the surface. Ms. Brooks, he said. Mr. Jack. They shook hands. Were brief, professional. He waited until she sat before taking his seat across from her. I appreciate you agreeing to this, Wilson said. You said it was business, Sophia replied evenly. It is, he said. Primarily. She arched an eyebrow. Primarily. A corner of his mouth lifted. I didn't say exclusively. Sophia picked up her menu, giving herself a moment. Then we should be clear. I don't mix business with ambiguity. Interesting word choice, Wilson said. Ambiguity. She glanced up. I'm very clear about my boundaries. I can see that, he replied. You make people earn access. Sophia closed the menu without looking. No, I make people respect it. The waiter arrived, saving Wilson from responding too quickly. Wine was ordered, 1 glass for Sophia, a bottle for Wilson. When they were alone again, the air between them shifted. Tell me something, Wilson said. Why real estate? Sophia didn't hesitate. Because I like solving problems people don't see. He nodded slightly. That sounds rehearsed. It's practiced, she corrected. There's a difference. And the real answer? She met his gaze. Because it's one of the few industries where someone without a safety net can still build something, if they're relentless enough. Wilson studied her for a moment longer than necessary. Relentless, he echoed. Yes, you are, he said. Not a compliment, not a challenge, an observation. Sophia took a sip of wine. And you? Me? Why build empires? She asked. You could have stopped years ago. A pause. Control, Wilson said simply. Then, after a beat, and fear. That caught her attention. Fear of what? Being irrelevant, he said. Of being replaceable. Of discovering that everything I built was the only thing keeping me interesting. Sophia blinked. That wasn't arrogance. That was honesty. She didn't soften, but she didn't deflect either. That sounds lonely, she said. Wilson exhaled slowly, as if he hadn't meant to say any of that aloud. Loneliness is efficient. It doesn't distract. Sophia smiled faintly. That's what people say when they don't want to admit they're tired of being alone. His gaze sharpened, not defensive, but curious. You don't let people rewrite you, he said. I don't let them project onto me, she replied. Their food arrived, interrupting the moment. Conversation shifted to logistics, buyers, timelines, discretion. Sophia spoke with confidence, clarity, precision. Wilson challenged her assumptions. She countered with data. They sparred politely, intellectually. Each push met with resistance. She didn't back down. And that was when something inside Wilson shifted. You know, he said after a moment, most people in this position try harder to impress me. Sophia set her fork down. I'm not here to impress you. No, he agreed. You're here to succeed. And those aren't the same thing, she added. He smiled. No, they're not. The wine bottle was half empty now, but Sophia remained measured. She checked her watch discreetly. I should go soon, she said. I have an early morning. Wilson nodded, unsurprised. Of course you do. They stood together, the city glowing behind them. Thank you for dinner, Sophia said. My pleasure, Wilson replied. Then, before she could step away, he added, You don't flirt. She turned back to him. Is that a complaint? No, he said slowly. It's an observation. And I find it disarming. Sophia met his gaze, steady and unyielding. Good. It's meant to be. She started to walk away. Sophia, she paused. I like when you don't want me, Wilson said quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't turn back. She simply said, Then don't confuse that with an invitation. And left him standing there, curious, unsettled, and more interested than he'd been in years. If this chapter pulled you in, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. It helps us keep bringing you stories with tension, depth, and moments that linger. Wilson remained where he was long after she disappeared into the elevator. Marcus appeared a moment later. Shall I bring the car around, sir? Wilson didn't answer right away. I miscalculated, he said finally. Marcus frowned. About what? Wilson picked up his glass, studying the faint imprint her fingers had left. I thought tonight would be about leverage, he said. Turns out? Wilson smiled, slow, thoughtful, dangerous. It's about restraint. Wilson Jack had learned long ago how to live inside silence. It wasn't the absence of sound that bothered him. He'd grown used to empty rooms and echoing hallways, but the way silence exposed everything he worked so hard to keep buried. Tonight, it followed him home. He stood alone in the penthouse, jacket draped over a chair, city lights stretching endlessly below the windows. The dinner replayed in fragments he hadn't expected to linger. Sophia's steady gaze, the way she refused to lean in, the way she walked away without looking back. I like when you don't want me. The words echoed now, sounding less confident in the quiet. Wilson poured himself a drink he didn't finish. He hadn't meant to say it. Not like that. It had slipped past his armor, pulled out by something unfamiliar. Restraint. Most people wanted him. His name opened doors. His money erased hesitation. Desire came easy, too easy. But Sophia Brooks hadn't softened, hadn't angled herself toward him, hadn't mistaken proximity for permission. Rejection wasn't new to Wilson. What unsettled him was that this one felt earned. The next morning, Wilson canceled 2 meetings and drove himself. No security convoy, no assistant in the passenger seat. He took the long way, winding through neighborhoods he rarely entered. Older streets, smaller homes, lives lived without layers of insulation. When he stopped at a red light, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. For a moment, he didn't see the billionaire. He saw the boy who'd learned early that money could silence fear. Wilson grew up watching his mother count dollars at the kitchen table, lips pressed tight as if worry might leak out if she spoke. His father had been brilliant and absent, chasing ideas that never quite landed. Security had always been fragile, so Wilson built it. He turned brilliance into control, control into wealth, wealth into distance. Relationships became transactional. Love became conditional. Every woman he'd ever let close eventually reached for the same things: status, access, comfort. And when they did, something inside him shut down. Sophia was different. She didn't want what he could give. She wanted what he could withhold. Sophia noticed the change before she understood it. Wilson stopped challenging her just to test her reactions. His emails became shorter, sharper, respectful. He asked questions, not about strategy, but about why she chose certain buyers. She answered carefully. One afternoon, she arrived at the Buckhead mansion to review offers and found him waiting, not behind a desk, not surrounded by screens, just standing by the window. "Long day?" she asked. "Long life," he replied. She almost smiled. They sat at the dining table, papers spread between them. Business first? Always business. But halfway through, Wilson paused. "Do you believe people change?" he asked. Sophia looked up slowly. "That depends on who's asking." "I am." "Then yes," she said, "but only when they stop protecting the version of themselves that worked once." His jaw tightened. "You think I'm protecting something?" "I think you built armor," she said gently. "And armor is heavy." Silence stretched. "You don't know me," he said. "No," she agreed. "But I know loneliness when I see it." Wilson stood abruptly, walking toward the window again. "I wasn't always like this," he said quietly. "I used to believe connection was worth the risk." "What changed?" "People," he replied. "They wanted the outcome, not the process. The benefits, not the man." Sophia rose slowly, careful not to crowd him. "And now?" "Now," he said, turning to face her, "I don't let anyone close enough to want the wrong thing." Their eyes held. "And me?" she asked softly. "I don't know what you want," Wilson admitted. "That's because I haven't decided yet," she said. Something in his expression shifted. Relief tangled with tension. They stood there, inches apart. The city hummed beyond the glass. For a moment, the world narrowed to breath and possibility. Wilson lifted a hand, hesitant, uncertain. Sophia didn't move away. The space between them felt electric. And then, Wilson's phone rang. The sound shattered the moment. He dropped his hand, jaw tight. Sophia stepped back instinctively. "Business," he said, answering it automatically. She watched him turn away, the armor sliding back into place. Almost. Not quite. As she gathered her things to leave, he ended the call and looked at her. "I'm not good at this," he said quietly. "At what?" "At wanting something I can't buy." Sophia met his gaze, heart steady but aware. "Then maybe," she said, "this is the first time you're doing it right." She left him there, alone, thoughtful, and closer to the edge than he'd been in years. The house sold on a Thursday. Sophia knew it the moment her phone rang. She was standing in line at a coffee shop near Midtown, balancing her laptop bag on one shoulder, when the number flashed across the screen. An unfamiliar area code, but one she'd learned to recognize quickly. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. She stepped out of line and answered. "Ms. Brooks," the buyer's attorney said, "we're officially closed. Funds have cleared." Sophia closed her eyes. For a moment, the noise of the city faded. The espresso machine, the chatter, the traffic outside. All she could hear was her own breathing. "It's done?" she asked quietly. "It's done," he confirmed. "Congratulations." She thanked him, ended the call, and leaned against the wall. Her hands were shaking. This wasn't just a sale. It was rent paid 3 months in advance. It was debt loosened from her throat. It was proof, solid, undeniable, that she hadn't been foolish to keep going. Sophia smiled, a small, private thing, and ordered her coffee. Black. No sugar. She didn't need comfort today. She needed clarity. Wilson was already waiting when she arrived at the mansion later that afternoon. No jacket, no phone in his hand. Just him, standing in the sunlight, pouring through the tall windows. The house strangely empty now that it no longer belonged to him. "You did it," he said. "I did," she replied. There was no gloating in her voice. No relief either. Just certainty. They sat at the dining table one last time, paperwork neatly stacked between them. "The final number exceeded expectations," Wilson said. "Your strategy worked." Sophia nodded. "It always does when people listen." A beat. "I listened," he said. She looked at him then, not guarded, not defensive, simply aware. "I know," she said. He slid a document across the table. Sophia glanced down. Her breath caught. "This commission," she began. "Is higher than agreed," Wilson finished. "Intentionally." She looked up sharply. "That wasn't part of the contract." "No," he said. "It's part of the apology." Sophia studied his face, searching for calculation. She found none. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I owe you respect," Wilson replied, "and acknowledgement." "For what?" "For reminding me that power doesn't excuse assumptions," he said quietly. "For calling me out when no one else would." Sophia leaned back in her chair. "This isn't charity," he added. "You earned every dollar." She considered the document again. This money would change things. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but in the ways that mattered. Breathing room. Options. Time. She signed. Wilson watched her carefully, as if the moment held more weight than the transaction itself. When she finished, she slid the papers back across the table. "Thank you," she said. Simple. Clean. They stood together near the window, the city stretched wide beneath them. "What will you do now?" Wilson asked. Sophia smiled faintly. "Live without panic for a while." He nodded. "That's a luxury." "No," she corrected. "That's stability. Luxury is optional." A pause. "I meant what I said," Wilson added. "About being wrong." She looked at him fully now. "I know." "And about liking when you don't want me." Sophia's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes softened. "This," she said, gesturing between them, "doesn't get to be complicated by money." "It doesn't have to be complicated at all," he said. "It does," she replied. "When power's uneven." Wilson stepped closer, not invading, just present. "What if it isn't?" he asked. Sophia held his gaze for a long moment. Then she shook her head almost sadly. "I need to walk away while this is still clean," she said. "While I'm choosing, not reacting." "That sounds like fear," Wilson said gently. "No," she replied. "It sounds like growth." She picked up her bag. "I meant it when I said I don't mix business with ambiguity," she continued, "and I don't confuse gratitude with obligation." Wilson watched her, really watched her, as she moved toward the door. "You won't answer my calls," he said. Sophia paused. "I didn't say that." She turned back, eyes steady. I said I won't stay just because it's tempting." She opened the door. Then she stopped, just once more. "You were right about one thing," she said. "Oh?" "You're not untouchable," she said softly. You just forgot what it feels like to be met halfway. And then she was gone. Wilson remained where he was long after the door closed. The house felt different now. Empty, but lighter. For the first time in years, someone had taken something from him that he couldn't replace. And instead of anger, he felt something dangerously close to hope. Wilson Jack had always believed obsession was a weakness. It was what happened when people lost control, when desire overrode logic, when emotion disrupted momentum. He built his life around the opposite principle: precision, discipline, distance. And yet, Sophia Brooks was everywhere. And she appeared in the pauses between meetings, in the quiet seconds before sleep, in the way his attention drifted when it shouldn't. He caught himself rereading old emails she'd sent, professional, efficient, utterly uninterested in charm, and wondering what she was thinking when she typed them. He didn't call. Not because he couldn't, because she had walked away, and he'd understood the rules in that moment. Choice mattered to her. So Wilson did the only thing that felt honest. He waited. Days passed, then a week. He threw himself into work, convinced productivity would dull the edge. It didn't. If anything, success felt hollow without someone to measure it against. One evening, he found himself driving without direction. No driver, no schedule, just movement. So he stopped at a grocery store near Midtown, one of the few places in the city where no one recognized him without context. He picked up a basket, wandered aisles aimlessly, stared too long at labels. That was when he saw her. Sophia stood by the produce section, hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a simple top, studying avocados with intense concentration, like the decision mattered deeply. She looked normal. Real. Wilson froze. This wasn't a boardroom. There were no contracts, no power imbalance to hide behind, just fluorescent lights and a shopping cart. She turned, caught his gaze, and blinked. "Wilson," she said. "Sophia." Neither smiled right away. "This is unexpected," she added. "Is it?" he asked lightly. "You still live in the city." She huffed softly. "So do 4 million other people." A beat. They stood there, so two people pretending coincidence wasn't loaded. "I won't interrupt," Wilson said. Shopping?" she offered. "Yes," he replied. "Terribly." She glanced into his basket. "Wine, pasta, and cereal?" "I panicked," he admitted. That earned him a smile. Brief. Unguarded. "Try the avocados with darker skin," she said. "They're ripe." Noted. She moved past him, pushing her cart forward. He watched her for half a second too long. "Dinner," he said suddenly. She stopped, turned slowly. "No," she said. He nodded. "Fair." She hesitated. "I meant not like that." Wilson's brow furrowed. She sighed. I can't go from walking away to pretending nothing changed." "I wouldn't ask you to," he said quietly. They stood there again, the hum of the store filling the space. "I miss our conversations," he added. "That's all." Sophia studied him carefully, as if searching for ulterior motives. "And this isn't about control?" she asked. "No," Wilson said. "It's about honesty." She considered that. "Coffee," she said finally. 5 minutes. Right there. He followed her to the small cafe tucked near the entrance. They talked about nothing important. Weather, traffic, a book she was reading, a neighborhood he'd driven through recently and liked. It was effortless. And that terrified him. When her phone buzzed, Sophia glanced at the screen. "I have to go," she said. "Of course." They stood. "Thank you," she added, "for not pushing." Wilson met her eyes. "Thank you for not disappearing." She hesitated, then nodded and walked away. Wilson watched her leave with something aching and unfamiliar lodged firmly in his chest. That night, Wilson didn't sleep, but he replayed the grocery store encounter again and again, not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary. She'd met him where he was, not above, Not below. Equal. The realization settled heavily. He wanted more, but not possession. Not conquest. Connection. The next morning he sent her a message. I don't want anything from you except permission to be honest. The reply came an hour later. Honest about what? He didn't overthink it. That I think about you more than I should. That walking away didn't make the feeling disappear. That I'm not asking you for anything you don't want to give. Minutes passed. Then, meet me tonight. One conversation. No promises. Wilson exhaled slowly. They met at a quiet overlook just as the sun dipped below the skyline. Sophia leaned against the railing, arms crossed, not closed, just contained. You fall hard, she said without looking at him. I fall deliberately, Wilson replied. This time. She turned to face him. Say it, she said. He didn't hesitate. I'm interested in you, Wilson said. Emotionally. Not strategically. Not conditionally. Sophia searched his face. And if I say no? Then I'll respect it, he said, and carry it quietly. A long silence stretched between them. This is the part where you're supposed to be confident, she said softly. I am, he replied, confident enough to be vulnerable. Her breath hitched. They stood there, the city glowing below them, the space between them charged and careful. And for the first time since he'd built his empire, Wilson Jack wanted something that couldn't be taken, only offered. They stood too close. Yes, not close enough to touch, close enough to notice the heat where space should have been. The overlook was quiet now. The city stretched below them like a living thing, breathing light and sound. Sophia rested her hands on the cool metal railing, grounding herself. Wilson stood beside her, not crowding, not retreating. Balanced. You're being very calm about this, Sophia said finally. Wilson glanced at her. About wanting you? Yes. I don't feel calm, he admitted. I feel deliberate. She let out a breath. That makes it worse. He smiled faintly. I suspected it might. They lapsed into silence again. Not awkward, not empty. Just full. Sophia broke it first. You don't usually wait, she said. Men like you don't. Men like me usually don't have to, Wilson replied. That's the difference. She turned toward him then, your arms crossing, not defensively, but protectively. That's exactly what scares me, she said. Power has a way of pretending its patience. Wilson didn't interrupt. I've worked too hard, she continued. I've watched people mistake generosity for ownership, attention for entitlement. I can't afford to lose myself just because something feels good. He nodded slowly. Then don't. Sophia frowned slightly. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said, but it's simple. How? By letting you lead, Wilson replied, and by listening when you tell me to stop. Her breath caught, just barely. That's not how this usually goes, she said. I know, he replied. That's why I'm choosing it. She studied his face, searching for cracks, for ambition masquerading as restraint. What happens? She asked quietly. Why, when you realize you want more than I'm ready to give? Wilson didn't hesitate. Then I want more quietly, he said. Or not at all. Sophia looked away, jaw tightening. You don't get points for saying the right thing, she murmured. I'm not trying to win, Wilson said. I'm trying to be honest. She laughed softly, no humor in it. You really don't know how rare that is, do you? I'm learning, he said. The space between them shifted, thicker now, charged. Sophia could feel it, the pull, the possibility, the danger. She wanted him, not because he was powerful, not because he was persistent, but because he was standing still when everything in him could have moved forward. That restraint felt intimate in a way touch never had. You're different tonight, she said. So are you. She met his gaze again, I don't want to be someone you pursue." Wilson's expression softened. "Then don't be." "I want to choose," she said, "not be chosen." "Then choose," he replied gently. Sophia exhaled, long and slow. "This doesn't get to turn into something messy," she said. "It won't," Wilson promised. "Not unless you let it." "And if I don't?" "Then it stays exactly where it is," he said. "Unfinished. Honest." The word lingered. Unfinished. Sophia pushed off the railing and stepped closer. Close enough now that she could feel the warmth of him, the steady presence. She didn't touch him, but she didn't step back either. "This is dangerous," she said softly. "Yes," Wilson replied. "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with you," he said, danger included. She searched his eyes one last time. Then she nodded. "Once," Sophia said. Wilson's breath hitched. One conversation," she continued. "One evening. No expectations, no leverage. On your terms," he said, completely. He inclined his head, a gesture of respect that felt more intimate than a kiss. "Then I accept," Wilson said. Sophia stepped back, reclaiming the space between them. "I'll call you," she added. "Don't rush it." "I won't," he said, and for the first time he meant it without effort. She walked away slowly this time. Not because she was uncertain, but because she knew exactly how much was at stake. Wilson remained at the overlook, watching her disappear into the night, heart steady, restraint intact, desire sharper than ever. One meeting, on her terms. And somehow, that felt like everything. Sophia chose the place carefully. Not a restaurant, not his penthouse. Neutral ground. A high-rise balcony overlooking the city, borrowed from a friend who was out of town. Wide enough to breathe. Open enough that nothing felt hidden. The kind of space where words mattered more than walls. When Wilson arrived, the sky was already shifting. Deep blue bleeding into night. The city below lighting up in slow, deliberate patterns. Sophia stood at the railing, arms folded loosely, hair moving with the breeze. "You picked this," Wilson said quietly. "Yes." "Why?" She didn't turn. "Because it reminds me that nothing we're feeling exists in isolation." He stepped onto the balcony but didn't come closer. "I've respected your terms," he said. "I know." "And tonight?" he asked. "Tonight," she replied, finally turning to face him, "is still on my terms." He nodded. "Always." They stood there, facing each other with the city between them. Sophia broke the silence first. "You said you changed," she said. "Because of me." Wilson didn't hesitate. "I did." "That's a heavy thing to put on someone." "I'm not asking you to carry it," he said. "I'm owning it." She studied him, really studied him, looking for the polished confidence, the armor, the distance. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't in control anymore. "I didn't know how much I relied on power until I met someone who wasn't impressed by it," Wilson continued. "You didn't want access. You didn't want protection. You wanted honesty. And I realized I'd been hiding behind everything I built," he said, calling it discipline when it was fear. Sophia inhaled slowly. "You didn't soften for me," he added. "You stood your ground. That forced me to look at mine." The words settled between them, heavy, but sincere. Sophia looked away, gaze drifting to the city lights. "I didn't plan for this," she said quietly. "I didn't want to see you differently." "But you do." "Yes," she admitted. "And that scares me more than not seeing you at all." Wilson stepped closer, still not touching. "Why?" "Because I see you trying," she said. "And trying is dangerous. It creates hope." He smiled faintly. "Hope is risk." "So is disappointment," she replied. They stood there close enough now that the space between them felt intentional. "I don't want to become a lesson for you," Sophia said. or a chapter you outgrow." "You won't," Wilson said immediately. Then he stopped himself, softened his tone. "Not because I expect anything, but because I'm not chasing you. I'm choosing to meet you." She met his eyes again. "You've never had to wait for someone," she said. "No," he admitted, "and I've never learned patience this way." She laughed softly. "You're doing better than you think." A pause. "Do you see me differently now?" Wilson asked. Sophia hesitated. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." "How?" "Less untouchable," she replied. "More human." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. "That's the most valuable thing anyone's ever taken from me," he said. They stood there, the night wrapping around them, the city humming below like a reminder that life kept moving, whether they crossed lines or not. Sophia stepped closer, not into him, just near. "This doesn't end tonight," she said. "No," Wilson agreed. "It doesn't." "But it doesn't become something physical just because it could," she continued. "I wouldn't want it that way," he said. "Not with you." She lifted her hand, not to touch him, but to gesture between them. "This," she said, "matters." "Yes," Wilson replied. "And if it matters," she continued, "then it needs time." He nodded. "Time is the one thing I never learned to respect." She smiled faintly. "You're learning." The moment stretched, quiet, charged, full. If either of them leaned in, the line would disappear. Neither did. Wilson broke the silence, voice low and honest. "What if," he asked, "I fall harder than you?" Sophia didn't answer right away. She looked out over the city, the lights reflecting in her eyes. Then she turned back to him. "Then," she said softly, "you'll have to trust that falling doesn't mean losing." The words lingered. She stepped back, reclaiming the space, not out of fear, but intention. "I'll see you soon," she added. "I'll wait," Wilson said. And for the first time in his life, waiting didn't feel like weakness. It felt like faith. Sophia didn't rush the morning. She woke to soft light spilling across the bedroom wall, the city already humming somewhere beyond the glass. For once, her chest didn't tighten at the thought of the day ahead. No panic checklist. No mental math about overdue bills. Stability had a sound. It was quiet. She made coffee and stood by the window, mug warm in her hands, thinking about the night before. Not with longing, but clarity. The conversation. The restraint. The way nothing had been taken, yet something real had been offered. Choice. She'd built her life on choosing to keep going, choosing to walk away, choosing herself when it would have been easier not to. And now she was choosing growth over fear. Her phone buzzed. "Wilson. Good morning. No expectations today. Just wanted to say I'm grateful." She smiled, small, genuine, and typed back. "Sophia. Me too. Let's keep it honest." She didn't add anything else. Neither did he. Wilson canceled a meeting he would have once considered untouchable, not impulsively, not dramatically, just deliberately. He sat in his office, sleeves rolled, city stretching wide below him, and reviewed a decision he'd made the night before. He was done trying to steer outcomes. He wanted to show up. Humility felt unfamiliar, but it also felt lighter. Marcus appeared at the doorway. "You're late to nothing today," he observed. Wilson smiled faintly. "That's the point." He stood and walked to the window, thinking of Sophia, not as a prize, not as a possibility to be managed, but as a person who had seen him clearly and refused to be dazzled. He respected her for that. He respected himself for honoring it. They met again a week later. Daytime, public, simple. A quiet park, sunlight filtering through leaves, the city softened by distance. Sophia wore flats and confidence. Wilson wore no armor. They walked side by side, conversation unforced. Work, books, the absurdity of certain expectations neither had ever questioned before. "This feels different," Sophia said at one point. "Because it is," Wilson replied. "There's no rush." She nodded. "Good." They stopped near a bench overlooking a small pond. "I want to be clear," Sophia said. "I don't need saving. I don't need elevating. I don't need promises." Wilson met her gaze. "I'm not offering any of those." "What are you offering?" she asked. "Presence," he said. And patience." She considered that. "Those are rare," she said. "They're yours," he replied. "If you want them." Sophia smiled, not because she was convinced, but because she felt respected. "I do," she said, "but slowly." "Slow works," Wilson said. They sat, talked, watched the water ripple. No hands reached, no lines blurred. And somehow, that made everything clearer. Weeks passed. They learned each other in fragments, preferences, habits, boundaries. Wilson learned when to listen. Sophia learned when to let silence breathe. They didn't rush love. They built respect. And respect, Sophia realized, was the most intimate foundation she'd ever stood on. One afternoon, walking past a line of parked cars, Sophia caught her reflection in a polished side mirror. She stopped, smiled. Wilson noticed. "What?" "Nothing," she said. Then, less after a beat, "Just remembering where this started." He looked at the mirror, then at her. "Funny how small moments do that," he said. She nodded. "They change everything." Wilson reached out, not to take her hand, but to stand beside her, equal, intentional, present. Sophia turned to him, eyes steady. "This doesn't have to be perfect," she said. "No," Wilson agreed. "It just has to be chosen." They stood there for a moment longer, the city moving around them, the future unwritten, but no longer frightening. Sometimes love doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it watches you in a mirror and changes everything. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, and comment the city you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more stories about choice, growth, and love that refuses to rush.